Hey everybody, this is Amanda Trumpauer with another low budget, no post-production video update on writing and things going on in my life. This update is going to start out a little bit different from the others. It's a personal life development. On June 6th, which was 2 Sundays ago, June 6, 2021, we got a call early in the morning that my paternal grandfather, who lives in New York, was in the hospital dying rather suddenly of some medical situations. So my family rushed to New York to be with them in his final hours. Huge shout out, by the way, to Josiah and Mom Trumpauer and all of my local friends that filled in as emergency babysitters and support for Josiah so that I could be away in New York for an indefinite period of time, which is not easy to do when you have 2 toddlers. But I was blessed to be able to go with my nuclear family, and we made it in time to see my grandpa one more time before he passed away, and then to also be there for half a week as we had the opportunity to help plan his funeral service. So that was not how I expected the week to start, and it is a contributing factor why it was longer than I hoped it would be before I could finish telling you some of the writing news that I had. But it's kind of all interconnected. As I got to spend some time with my grandma and celebrate the life of my grandpa, I had the opportunity to think about his life and some of the ways that they helped me get to where I'm at today, whether that was directly or indirectly. So I just wanted to share for just a second, when somebody dies, you know, everybody says, oh, he was a good man, or she was a nice lady. And that's not terribly specific. So just to give you a little bit of color, what the loss of my grandpa Pickford is like to me anyways. He wasn't just a good man. He was genuinely selfless. He's the most selfless person I've met. Only in competition with my dad, but I think that makes sense because it was his dad. So I definitely think that the best testimony to the type of man that my grandpa was is actually the type of man that my dad is. Many of you watching this never had the opportunity to meet my grandpa, but some of you have met my dad, and if anybody who's met my dad is just really impressed with the depth of character and the quality of man that he is. And that's 100% traceable back to the type of man that my grandpa was. He was genuinely selfless, like my dad. I'm 29 years old, and I can maybe remember my dad raising his voice twice, like in my entire life, which is a really big achievement when you have kids. And the same goes for my grandpa. They lived in New York. I wasn't able to be around them every day, but I never heard my grandpa raise his voice. I never heard him snap. I never heard him do all the things that the rest of us do. He was a genuinely selfless person, and he was consistently patient. And when you have those two qualities, you're just a very special caliber of person. And that's the type of man that my grandpa was. So when he passed away, it was a significant loss to the family and to his community. He was a Salvation Army pastor for like 40 years. He had an education background. He worked with students and did a lot of really cool different things. He touched a lot more lives than what I think most of us do, especially those of us who aren't involved in formal church ministry. So his loss is felt deeply in our family and in his community, and also kind of in like who I am and what I'm trying to do. In addition to all of the personal character qualities, my grandpa was very generous in his support of the different goals that the individual members in my family have. There's several of us trying to do some pretty unique and cool things, and they were just always really supportive of that. And I'm no exception. They just recently in April sent Josiah and I a surprise monetary gift. And they didn't know this at the time, but you've heard me talk about the publishing class that I was able to take in April and how big of an impact that made on me and really helped me change my game plan about some really big picture things. Well, my grandparents are 50% of the reason that that class even happened. They sent an unexpected birthday gift, and then my brother-in-law sent an unexpected birthday gift. And when you tallied the two amounts together, it was the exact amount down to the dollar of what I needed to be able to attend the class. And I think that's a really cool story, but it's even cooler because neither of those individuals knew that I wanted to take the class. And their gift arrived 2 days before registration closed. So I really think that it's just really cool to see how the generosity of one person snowballs into how God is going to use it in different ways. And to my regret, I never had the chance to kind of explain all that to my grandpa, but while I was with them for the week, I had certainly told Grandma, I was like, hey, I just want you to know that because of what Grandpa did, this is kind of what has happened. And so the rest of this update is basically that version of this version of that conversation to you. I wanted to kind of share what my new plan is as a consequence of not only the class that I took that Grandpa helped me get into, but also just some of the other supplementary learning that I've been doing over the last several months. When you want to be an author and you want to get books into reader hands, there's two main avenues to do that. I'm simplifying here, but for the sake of the conversation, there's two big ways to do that. You can be traditionally published, which means that you write the book and then you go and you find an agent with great diligence and perseverance, and then hopefully that agent is able to sell your manuscript to an editor at a publishing house, and then the publishing house handles the mass production and the distribution. And that's the traditional flow of how a book goes from brain to reader hands. The alternative way is to do it yourself, to hire the professionals on a contract basis. So, you hire your cover artist, you hire your editors, and there's several types of editors. I've already explained that in the previous episode, but several types of editors and layout and marketing, and it's that you're the captain of your own boat. You literally do everything yourself, and you sell directly to readers, whether that's through Amazon, through a personal website that you run, through conventions, through events, through all of the above. That's the world of indie publishing, and both of them are fine. I have never been interested in indie publishing. I have always wanted to be traditional. I like the validation that comes with it. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I like the validation. Not everybody can be traditionally published. There are gatekeepers and there are standards and expectations, and it is hard. It is hard with a capital H to get in. I don't know how accurate the statistics are, but I recently saw something like 1% to 2% of manuscripts from all the debut authors make it. It's really hard. And I've never been intimidated by that because this is what I want to do. And I am going to keep doing this until I'm successful. That's just all there is to it. So I kind of liked the odds because I knew that it was going to feel really good once I made it happen. The problem with that is there were a lot of I words in that sentence. My class that I took encouraged me to consider why I write and who I'm trying to write for. Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. I write for Christian homeschool families. My secondary audience are Christian readers, and not even all the time parents. Like Robin Hood is an adult fantasy book, and you don't have to have a child to enjoy that. As long as you're an adult, you're good to go. But my primary audience are Christian homeschool families, and they're a subculture all to their own. I was homeschooled. We plan to homeschool our children. It's my home team. It's where I feel comfortable. And then that secondary audience, like I said, are just Christian readers in general, adults, children, depending on the project I'm working on. But my class really encouraged us to consider, who is your primary audience? And knowing now that I've done some soul searching over the last several months, knowing that homeschool Christian families are my target audience, That informs my business strategies. Indie publishing works really well for homeschooling because homeschoolers are just different. They have different needs than some of your other more mainstream categories. And as an indie author, you're more mobile. You can kind of do what you need to do to reach those people because you're the captain of your own boat. You can kind of go down the smaller river. You don't have to just go down the big established one. So I was kind of forced to confront that in my class and some of the other learning I was doing back in April and May. And it was hard. There were lots of soul struggling, soul searching moments, lots of teary conversations with my husband, lots of existential crisis. Because like I said, I like the validation. I want to know that I have made it. But that's not what this is about. I'm borrowing a talent that God has loaned me. At least that's how I like to think of it, because I'm not good at many things. I'm going to be honest with you. The writing books, like, it's good I have that because I don't have anything else. I'm really not good at very much. But I know I can do this. And I really think that although it's fine to write for a secular audience if you're a Christian, that's totally fine. I think for me, I don't think that's what I'm supposed to do. I do think I'm supposed to serve fellow Christians. And I think specifically I'm supposed to serve the families because I was homeschooled and I loved fantasy fiction and mystery fiction. And I know how annoying it is as a kid to want to have an awesome fantasy book to read and your parents not being able to approve so many of the options because they just have a bunch of crap in them, to be honest. A lot of language and a lot of content that just need to be there. So I want to fill that need, and I'm really, really passionate about being there for that reader who's like, please give me a book. So if I have to give up like my pursuit of external validation in order to serve the people that I think God wants me to serve, like, I feel like that's a pretty good trade-off. So after some soul searching, that's where I've landed. That I'm gonna kind of move this process in the direction of investigating what a career in indie publishing would look like. Perhaps not to the exclusion of traditional publishing, and I'm gonna talk about that in a minute, but my immediate focus is switching to more of an indie model. So what that means, some of you know that Robin Hood is not my first project. My first public-facing project, anyways, was a illustrated mystery chapter book series called Collar Cases that I did in tandem with a really talented artist friend of mine named Michaela Muckelrath. And we did this in college. We did 2 books. I have the third written. It's been written for years. But my life was starting to change at the time that we were doing the third one. I moved out, I got married, I had the kids. So all of that had to be pressed pause, and then Robin Hood came along and I didn't think I was going to finish Collar Cases, so I just switched because now we were going to be traditionally published anyways with Robin Hood. Joke's on me, we're back to indie publishing and we're back to Collar Cases. Collar Cases is very homeschool friendly. It's written for kids. Robin Hood is not. Robin Hood is an adult fantasy. Collar Cases is a middle grade mystery series. It's 8 to 12. I've been blessed to get a lot of positive feedback about it as I shared it with, my initial small group of readers when I first published it. I actually did several speaking gigs with Michaela. After school appearances, classroom visits, that sort of thing. And we sold several units of books. So it's not a brand new project, but I am going to re-envision it. There were a couple of production flaws that I am really not proud of that were just products of my inexperience. So I'm going to be focusing on improving the manuscripts now that I'm a little bit more experienced and I have an actual business plan that I'm following. So we're going to be making that better than what it was the first time around. That's going to be my focus once the conference is over, because I am still keeping that commitment. Once the conference is over, my whole world switches to Collar Cases for a while to get all that ready, and I hope to have it ready to relaunch in January 2022. Stay updated on that because that's a very tentative goal, but that is my goal for myself, is to have all 3 books redone, cleaned up, looking fantastic, and ready to share in a very aggressive way more than what I did before. I'd like to start doing some homeschool conventions and some co-ops and getting in front of the homeschool families that I just really want to get to know and introduce myself and serve, because I am here for them to provide their kids and the parents, depending on the project, with reading material that they can be super excited about but not have to worry about filtering out. So that's my immediate future. Robinhood is not going anywhere. Robinhood is my baby and it is my passion, and I will die before I don't get this plane off the ground to you. So I am going to conference and I am still pitching my heart out. There's one organization in particular that I would just be thrilled to work with. It is kind of the dream home for Robinhood right now. And I do have the opportunity to have a conversation with the individual who's in charge of that organization. So I am going to give it my very best shot to find Robinhood a home with traditional publishing, because it is an adult fantasy. It's not specifically designed for homeschoolers per se. It's a little bit more friendly to that more mainstream audience. So I'm gonna give it its time to go through the querying process. It is a very long process to try to get an agent and find a home for a manuscript. So it's gonna take time anyways. And while I'm waiting for all that to happen, I might as well go ahead and work on collar cases rather than just twiddling my thumbs for several months. So assuming that post-conference to January is kind of my collar cases launch time, and then launching in January, hopefully. I would love to launch Robinhood fall 2022. I don't want to wait any longer than that. If it does find a home with a traditional publisher, it is going to be longer than that. It can take 2 years-ish to get a book all the way through where it needs to go with traditional publication. So if it gets a home, it is going to be a little bit of a wait. So that's the downside. If it does not get a home with traditional publication, that's not going to stop me. I will do the indie thing. I have some really specific plans on how I want that to look, so it is as high quality as possible. I don't want to commit to anything right now, but all of the main hallmarks that when you look at a book, you're like, oh yes, this is the real thing. I have a list and I have a plan for trying to make those things happen. So if I had my way, if we were publishing an indie, I would like it to be fall 2022. But the thing I do need to say is that the other reason that I'm doing collar cases first is because, frankly, it's expensive to produce a book. When you're going indie, you have all the costs that you're paying up front, and then you hope to reap the rewards long term over time. But you have to have the cash infusion to get the thing off the ground in the first place. And the problem with Robinhood is that because it's an adult fantasy novel, it's quite long. It's 120,000 words at the moment. And that's about 20,000 more words than what most manuscripts are, for a good reason. Once you get over 100,000 words, the cost of producing the book on a per book basis really goes up. So it's not a cheap book to produce, even though there's no illustrations or crazy things like that. And especially with what I want to do with it and how high quality of a product I want it to be, it is not cheap. So my hope is that if I can focus on something a little bit smaller and something that I've already had some level of success with and just make it better, I can go ahead and start serving the homeschool families, which is super important, but then also start building up a little bit of financial freedom so that I can pursue Robinhood on my own if need be. So that's kind of the major milestones. It breaks my heart to say that every moment of my focus is not going to be on Robinhood in the immediate future, but I do think it's for the best because I'm trying to get back there. I just need to get these other things in place in order to get this one out. So that was that news. The other thing that has actually happened in the last several months of my life that I haven't made time to tell you about is I am blessed with the opportunity to be a virtual assistant for a really cool lady named Katie J. Trent. She's a homeschool mom. She's a leader and a speaker. and just a leader figure in the Arizona homeschool community. And it's been awesome to work with her. It's only been a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two at this point. I'm just helping her with some organization things, some blog production things, just taking a few small things off her plate. And it's great. Like, I really love the opportunity to kind of follow along behind an experienced homeschool mom. Because of what I want to do and because of what she's doing already, it's just a really good fit, an opportunity for me to learn how to serve these people as well as I can. If you like devotional material, if you like resources on growing your faith as a family, that's her whole shtick, is kind of spiritual education for the family unit. So go check her out. She's really cool. Her name's Katie J. Trent, KATIEJ Trent.com. And she has a new book coming out in October, which you're going to hear a lot about from me, because one of my responsibilities is I'm going to help lead her lunch team and figure out what that looks like. So in October, she's got a really cool devotional coming up, which is part recipe book, part devotional. So you get to cook really fun food and talk about God as a family, and I think it's a really winning combination. So you'll hear more about that in the future, I promise. So that's pretty much it for my update. Just wanted to share about Grandpa and some of the changes that I have recently made to my professional career, largely as a byproduct of his involvement. You know, I was thinking when I was with the family over the week, you have a lot of time to think about the person that you've lost. And my only regret with Grandpa, and it's a big one, my only regret is that I didn't show him the book. I had it done for even a few months in there, and I didn't send it to him. I intended to. It was one of those things that I was always going to get around to doing. But I didn't send it to him. They're not big fantasy people, and not everybody is, so that's totally fine. But I figured, you know, as Grandma and Grandpa, I'd send them a token copy of the manuscript so that they could look at it and smile, even if they didn't actually read it. And so I do regret that. I regret that he died without being able to see specifically the fruit of what I was working on. It's something that I've talked about for years and shared updates with the family, so he knew that I was working on it, but he never got to see the full thing. But that's okay, because I'm sure other people in my family could provide their own interpretations of like Grandpa's main life goal. But for me, I really think he was just all about doing the very best job you could to serve the people God puts around you. Whatever that looks like, for however long that becomes, you just be the best help to them that you can for the time that you have. And I hope, I'm pretty sure if I was able to sit down and have a conversation with him like I did with my grandma during the funeral planning week and say, hey, you know, I have actually made a couple of changes about how I'm doing things and what I'm doing, because I feel like I know the group of people God wants me to serve now, and I'm trying to change everything to streamline to make that the very best service that it can be. I think he would be really proud of that, and I think he would be satisfied. So, didn't get to show him the book, but I am doing the best that I can to be the writer for the people that I think God wants me to write for, and I think he would be cool with that. So, if there's anything in your life that you've been working on, anything that's super important to you, something that you're all about, and there are people in your life who have helped you get there, whether that's emotional support or financial support or accountability or, you know, handling responsibilities for you so that you could go work on your thing, make sure you share it with the people in your lives, because we don't know how long we're going to have with people. And if they're investing in you to the best of your ability, you ought to let them reap some of the fruit with you as you begin to reap it yourself. So that is all I have for today. I will keep you updated on things, and especially conference things. We're down to 4 weeks, 4 weeks to conference. I'm really nervous and I'm really excited, and I cannot wait to share with you what happens at conference and all the things like that. So until then, have a fantastic afternoon.